Eglė, Queen of the Grass Snakes. Once upon a time, there lived an old man and an old woman. They had 12 sons and 3 daughters, the youngest of whom was called Eglė. One summer evening, the sisters went for a swim. They swam and splashed about, and having had their fill of it, they climbed out on shore and reached for their clothes. Eglė looked, and there, coiled up in the sleeve of her shirt, she saw a grass snake. What was she to do? Her older sister snatched up a stick in order to chase it, but the grass snake turned to Eglė and spoke in a human voice. "Eglė, my dear, promise to marry me, and I'll crawl out by myself." Now, this only made the tears well up in Egla's eyes, for how could she marry a snake? So she replied angrily, "Give me back my shirt, without further ado, and yourself crawl off to wherever it is you came from." But the grass snake remained where he was, and said as before, "Promise to marry me, and I'll crawl out." Not knowing what to do, Eglė said that she would. And the grass snake at once crawled out of her skirt and slithered away. Three days later, a great number of grass snakes came crawling into the old people's front yard, frightening everyone out of their wits. The matchmakers proceeded directly into the hut, and, approaching Eglė and her mother and father, said they had come a matchmaking. At first, the 2 old people were shaken and taken aback, and would not even hear of such a thing. But, learning that Eglė had given her word, and being confronted by such a vast number of snakes, they were much troubled. Whether they wanted to or not, the youngest and prettiest of their daughters would be marrying a grass snake, and there was little that they could do about it. Off went Eglė with the grass snakes, leaving her family behind, while they cried and mourned her departure, but could not do anything about it. Eglė, led by her escorts, headed for the seashore, and reached it by and by. There they were met by a handsome youth, who told Eglė that he was the very same grass snake that she had found in the sleeve of her shirt. They made off at once for the nearest island, from where they descended to the bottom of the sea, where stood a rich and beautiful palace. It was there they were married, and their wedding celebration, where they drank and feasted and danced, lasted for 3 whole weeks. The palace was filled with many lovely things, and Eglė felt merry and happy there. She began to feel peaceful. Her life became brighter, and as the days went by, she forgot her parents and her old home altogether. 9 years passed, and Eglė now had 4 children, 3 sons, Oak, Ash, and Birch, and a daughter, the youngest of the 4, whom she named Little Aspen. One day, Egla's oldest son, who had been running about and getting into mischief, began asking his mother where her parents were. "Where do they live, mother?" asked he. "I would so like to pay them a visit." It was only then that Eglė remembered her mother and father and her whole family, and set to wondering about how they were and whether they were still living. She was filled with great longing to see them, and she told her husband so. At first, Grassnake would not hear of it, but she begged him again and again, and he finally agreed to let her go. "Only you must make me some yarn out of this tow first," said he, and giving her some silky tow, pointed at the spinning wheel. Eglė set to work. She spun all day and night, but the bundle of tow grew no smaller. It came to her then that she was being tricked, that the tow was a magic tow, and that she could spin no yarn out of it, no matter how hard she tried. So off she went to see an old woman, a sorceress who lived close by. Said she to her in pleading tones, "Please, mother, please, my dear, show me how to spin this tow." "You must light the stove and throw the tow in the fire," the old woman told her. "You will never be able to finish spinning it otherwise." Eglė came home and, lighting the stove as if to bake some bread, threw the tow in the fire. It flared up and she saw a toad, the size of a large battledore, jumping about in the flames, a silky thread running out from its fiery mouth. Having finished spinning the thread in this fashion, Eglė again asked her husband to let her go and visit her parents just for a few days. This time, her husband dragged a pair of iron shoes from under the bench. "You can go as soon as you wear these out," said he. Eglė put on the shoes and began walking and stamping about in them and trying to break them on some sharp stones. But the shoes were thick and strong, and try as she would, she could not wear them out. In fact, there was no wearing them out at all. She now saw they would last her a whole lifetime. So off Eglė went to ask the old sorceress for her counsel again. "Take the shoes to a blacksmith. Let him put them in a forge and heat them to a white heat," said the old woman. Eglė did as she was told, and once the shoes were burnt through, she wore them out in 3 days, and again began pleading with her husband to let her go and see her parents. "Very well," said he. "Only bake a pie first, for it is not meet to go visiting anyone without taking something good to eat for the children of your brothers and relatives." But he had all the dishes in the palace put away, that there might be none left for Eglė to mix the dough in. Eglė cudgelled her brains for a long time, trying to think of how to bring water from a well without a pail, and how to mix dough without a trough. But as there was nothing she could think of, she went to see the old woman again. Said the old woman, "Do not try to draw water from a well, but take a sieve, stop up the holes with leaven, and use it to scoop up some water from a stream. Mix the dough in the same sieve." Eglė did as she was told. She mixed the dough, baked some pies, and prepared to set off with her children. Her husband saw them off. He brought them out onto the shore and admonished her. Do not spend more than 9 days in your parents' house and return on the 10th. Come out to the shore with only the children and no one else, and call out thus, If alive you are, my husband, white the foam will be and milky. If 'tis dead you are, beloved, red the foam will be and bloody. If the sea boils up and the foam is milk white, you will know that I am alive. If it boils up and the foam is blood red, then you will know that I am no more. As for you, children, mind that you tell no one what you have just heard. There was no end to rejoicing when Eglė appeared in her parents' house. All her kinsfolk and their neighbours too came to have a look at her, and everyone wanted to know how life was with the grass snakes. Was it nice? Was it fun? They marvelled at her account. They vied with each other in speaking kindly to her and in treating her to the best they had in the way of food and drink. Eglė did not notice how the 9 days flew by. In the meantime, her parents and her 12 brothers and sisters were racking their brains, trying to find a way to keep Eglė with them, and not to let her return to her husband. At last, they decided to worm out of her children how Eglė was to call him up from the bottom of the sea. For then they could go there, lure him up out of the depths, and kill him. Her brothers took Oak, Egla's oldest son, to the forest. They stood round him in a circle and began questioning him. But the boy pretended that he knew nothing, and threatened him and beat him with sticks as they would. They could get nothing out of him. They let him go, but then admonished him not to say a word about it to his mother. The next day they took Ash to the forest and questioned him, and on the day after that, Birch, but learnt nothing from either of them. At last they lured the youngest of Egla's children, little Aspen, to the forest. At first she too said that she knew nothing, but when they threatened to thrash her, she blurted out the secret. Then Egla's 12 brothers took their sharp sides, went to the shore of the sea, and called out, If alive you are, my husband, white the foam will be, and milky. If 'tis dead you are, beloved, red the foam will be, and bloody. Hearing them, Grass Snake swam up from the sea, and the 12 brothers fell upon him and slashed him to death with their scythes. After that they came back home, but they said not a word about what had happened to Eglė. 9 days passed, and it was time for Eglė to leave. She bade all her kin goodbye, and, going with her children to the shore of the sea, called out, If alive you are, my husband, white the foam will be, and milky. If 'tis dead you are, beloved, red the foam will be, and bloody. At this, the sea darkened and boiled up with a roar, and Eglė looked and saw that the foam cresting the waves was blood red. Suddenly, what did she hear but her husband's voice calling out to her? It was your 12 brothers that slashed me to death with their scythes, And it was little Aspen, our beloved little daughter, who betrayed me. Eglė was filled with grief and horror. With tears rolling from her eyes, she turned to little Aspen and spoke these words: "Be a tree, a fearful little tree, and timid. Never know peace of heart, but tremble always. Let the rain torment you without mercy. Let the wind pull madly at your tresses." Then, addressing her brave and faithful sons, she said, "You will grow to be great trees and handsome, with Eglė, your mother, always near you." And so it came to pass. Oak, ash, and birch grew up to be tall and mighty trees, and so they remain and are the strongest of our trees to this day. But Aspen trembles at the touch of the slightest breeze, even today, and all because she was once so frightened of her uncles that she betrayed her own father and mother.